Kind of a cool day here in Missoula. Kind of appropriate for a Halloween gathering here. I'm representing Dr. Oscar Craig, and he is known for several things, but when we think of Craig, I hope you will leave today with a couple thoughts. One of them is he was our first president of the University of Montana. He was a schoolboy in Indiana, went to college in Worcester College in Ohio. It's where he received his PhD, and he is a professor of history and political science that he took also to Purdue, and it's where he met a fraternity brother of his, Professor Frederick Shoy, that is just down the lane here. But he and Shoy both came west from Purdue University to really start the foundation of what we know today as the University of Montana. It was first part of June of 1895 when Oscar Craig came to Missoula. You'll have to kind of think back, be aware anyway, that in 1895 Missoula had only been settled for several decades. It was 1865 when it was settled. So in 1895 there's only about 4,000 people in the valley of Missoula. So and back west in those days there were not a whole lot of academic institutions, universities like you find back on the eastern seaboard, your Yale and Harvard. So we had some family here just within the last hour of Dr. Craig that were out of the Wilcox family, and we shared some things together, which was really fascinating. And I'm humbled to be able to talk about Dr. Craig, especially with family on the premises here at the cemetery. A real honor. But Oscar brought his love for academics and a pioneering spirit, probably pushed from professors at Purdue University, where they probably said to both Frederick Shoy and Dr. Craig, "Go west, young man," because it's west where we need to spread the good word and academics. So in June 3rd of 1895, Dr. Oscar Craig was appointed the first president of the University of Montana. He is the longest serving tenured president of the university, and he served until he retired in 1908. So he had about a 13-year stint there. A very colorful man who brought a pioneering spirit in that if he was to stand here with us today, he probably wouldn't want to be known as the president of the University of Montana, but on the $2,500 salary that Dr. Craig had back in 1895 that the Board of Regents gave him, it included a travel stipend. And you think, well, what would a man traveling in 1895 do in the territory of Montana? Well, the first class, the incoming classmen, the freshmen that came in, of the 119 that were registered, only 5 of them really were truly worthy of a higher academic endeavors of any university. And so it really talked to Oscar Craig's heart in that, what can he do to prepare young kids as they come up through elementary school and into high school, and get them prepared for the higher academic levels that you'll find at any university, and especially here in Missoula. So he traveled around. He ultimately became the inspector of all schools across the entire state, where he would communicate with superintendents from Bozeman, from Kalispell, to all the way to the far reaches in small and eastern plains of Montana. In doing my research at the university archives, I've seen handwritten communication to these superintendents talking about several things on how do we keep our students here in Montana, still an issue today. Instead of having them go out of state, they want to keep our homegrown folks right here in Missoula. So he was concerned about that, but his main concern was how do we prepare these young kids as they get into graduate from high school to get them ready for college. So he would travel, and he would want to be known as the curriculum that he brought to the early elementary age kids all the way through high school. By the time he retired in 1908, he literally had 26 high schools that were accredited for higher education, which is something he'd be very proud of. Was he proud of the university? Absolutely. But in his heart, he knew that he had done his work well to have that many schools accredited across the state of Montana, where these kids would come in and be prepared. Instead of the first 5 that were truly prepared for college in 1895, he had hundreds of them that were ready by the time 1908 rolled around. By the time he lost his life in 1911, it was due to kidney failure, had a kidney disease. So, he became president around 50, 51 years of age, so he was still quite a young man when when he was called to the heavens. His wife Narcissa was a charming, blessed young gal that did a lot of good to the community here in Missoula. Not only did she provide Oscar with two great children, a daughter who was also a librarian, our first librarian here at the University of Montana until the early 1900s, but also Vincent, who attended school here in Missoula at the University of Montana under his dad's tutelage. Oscar Craig was a busy man. Not only did he travel the state and president of the University of Montana, this man was the registrar, he was the administrator. He was the one, along with Frederick Shoy, that helped get the building ideas and the plans off the ground for 1897 when Main Hall was built with over 1 million bricks over the next several years. And 1902 is when they finally moved into Main Hall. Until that time, they were meeting, they worked with the city of Missoula and rented a 3-story schoolhouse where our women and men were housed in separate floors, in dorms. In that one building, they had a gymnasium, all their labs, their classrooms, and Oscar Craig's office was located in that. And in along about 1902, when Main Hall was dedicated, everything moved over into that. Everything happened in that building right there. And in 1902, they brought the 7-ton cornerstone out, where they blessed it with corn, with oil and water, symbolizing prosperity, health, and peace in our, not only in Montana, but our great country. And that began the University of Montana officially as far as housing right on campus. Soon thereafter followed Craig Hall. Both Prof. Shoy and Oscar Craig had a real passion that to attract more women in the university, we had to have a separate dorm for the women, which was a real blessing. So the Oscar Hall was the first building that would house our women. Science Hall was the building also was brought in alongside with that idea to bring more classrooms into the university. The Oval itself had a Spanish influence and an Eastern American influence in that it was designed where we had an oval in the center, Main Hall overlooking from Mount Sentinel, and all buildings facing in towards the oval. So that for the first several decades that seemed to work, but as building and the university grew, those buildings then would face different directions, typical growth that you find anywhere in our country. Oscar taught several classes. Like I said, his forte was history and political science. His staff in 1895 was 4 other people, along with Frederick Shoy over here. So they had a stipend, so to speak, of about $9,000 or $10,000 in 1895, 1896 to run the University of Montana. What's unique about both men and that era in 1895, in 1895 there was 500 trees, most of them ponderosa pines, that were brought in as seedlings planted on campus of those 40 acres that were donated from Colonel C.P. Higgins. Many of you probably recognize that name here in Missoula. So it's 40 acres of scraggly old bumpy land that had to be graded by horses and plows in those early years, and then planted with trees. Both Professor Shoy and Dr. Craig were known to take the horses down with wagons and fill up with buckets of Clark Fork water, larger containers on those wagons, and bring the horses and water back up and literally water those trees so they wouldn't die. And to this very day, if you were to walk across that campus of the university, there are 24 of those first 500 trees still living. They're ponderosa pines, each of them having an engraved bronze plate at the base of those trees. So as you walk by, you may want to tip your hat to those men who foresaw that barren land back in 1895 that needed to be forested. And no doubt that influence as we walk around Missoula, whether you're headed towards the university or walking around our cemetery, the influence that Oscar Craig had outside of academics in all the trees, the beauty, the colors you find this time of year, simply of what happened at the University of Montana back then. His traveling, again, his prowess was mostly dealing with the superintendents, getting our kids prepared for college. He, again, losing his life in 1911 to kidney failure, and his wife following in 1937 out of San Diego with heart disease and had a heart attack and took her life. Mary and Vincent had lived a long life, and many of the people you see here in the cemetery We're either fraternity brothers, we're faculty, we're friends, we're students. These men had influence on Eloise Knowles, who graduated in the early 1900s, who also ended up being on staff at the University of Montana. Dr. Aber, the Bonner brothers, Higgins, Dornblaser, and ultimately Mike Mansfield, who's our great state senator out of the great state of Montana. So we're all tied in one way or another. It was a real blessing to have the Wilcox family here that are tied in with the Craig family to hear more stories and find out more about Mary, their daughter, who did the teaching here at the University of Montana. So he was a great man that had a huge influence in our community, a huge influence in the western part of this great country of ours. And I tip my hat to the influence he had for all of us as we stand here today on this date, on this chilly afternoon in Missoula, to learn more about the traditions of the great city of Missoula and the fine institution that we call the University of Montana. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you. Appreciate it.